The late-night streets of Britain, now so full of drugs, not even the dealers know them all.
Have you got any triple sod?
Any
triple sod?
triple sod?
Triple sod?
What's that?
Yellow benzines?
I don't know what that is, my friend.
Have you not got any yellow benzines?
What's yellow benzines?
I just want something that makes it go really bluty.
No, the only thing sell out here is coke, my friend.
No, you must have some.
You're telling me what I have and what I don't have?
Are you the Boz Boz?
What's the
Are you a Boz Boz?
What's Boz Boz mean?
I don't want to end up like a bloody piano dentist.
If you don't want to, you don't have to buy it.
Yeah, but what I don't want my arms to feel like a couple of fortnights in a bad balloon.
My brother, I don't...
Do you know what I mean?
I'm not really bothered what you want your arms to feel like.
I'll tell you what, I'm less interested in giving you 40 quid to end up on a quack candle.
What's a quack candle?
OK, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 30 quid for one Clarky cat.
What's a Clarky can? You're not making sense.
Cat, a Clarky cat.
I don't know what you mean, man.
Are you telling me you definitely got no Clarky cat?
For the 10th time, I don't know what Clarky can means.
No, cat. Clarky
What
cat.
does it mean?
The stuff that you chew.
I don't know it.
You know, the grass stuff that you chew?
I do not know it.
Clarky cat or triple sub?
My friend, please leave us alone.
I'm at a modern drugs party. They're taking Charlie. He's got spliff smoke coming out of his drug end. There's someone over there smoking a crack. This isn't the exception anymore. It's just how people live today. No thanks, I don't use the horse. From Debs to plebs, this decade is not so much the 90s as the yard dankerties.
The headlines say it all. Liam's new staircase made out of gear. Drug bankers pulled my wife's head off and puked down the neck hole. And last one on drugs is a queer, yells Portillo. Even our leaders show the strain. Often drugging themselves senseless in public is a cry for help.
So what's the truth about drugs? Time to shatter a few myths. The effects of a heroin overdose are lethal. Yes, in the short term, but there's been absolutely no research into the long-term effects. Drugs destroy families. Well, a disabled, lonely teenager, a blind mother, but a family held together by the father's crack dealing, which he uses to keep them in talking books and dildos. People say alcohol's a drug. It's not a drug, it's a drink. Are 1 in 3 15-year-olds really on drugs? No, we proved it in tests.
To preserve the anonymity of our 15-year-old volunteers, we replaced each of them with 3 5-year-olds, and not one had even heard of drugs, let alone smoked one off. The biggest problem of all is the law. It is legal to carry drugs if you're not actually touching them. These men avoid contact by using helium balloons attached to little drug baskets. It's also legal to buy and sell drugs if you do it through a mandrill. Typically, mandrills work at night, approaching the house of a client with a drug pouch and returning with the money. Mandrills are intelligent and vicious, capable of throwing a 12-stone man over 40 feet. But mandrills have been protected by law ever since Queen Elizabeth I gave birth to a child resembling a mandrill by mistake.
The classic street signs of a nearby drug abuse. But what about this? Remnants of something far worse. A new legal drug from Czechoslovakia called cake. Oh, and luckily the story involves these people. Free the United Kingdom from drugs and British opposition to metabolically bisturbile drugs. Ted Moore reports.
Cake first appeared in Prague last year. News reports showed victims insane with pain. Disturbing images like this and a knowledge of the drug routes in Europe led to the formation of Free the United Kingdom from Drugs, incorporating British opposition to metabolically bisturbar drugs. Their single aim to enlist the great and good.
I'm Bernard Ingham, and this is a piece of cake.
To warn Britain about cake.
Fucking hell.
Before it was too late.
Hi, this is Bruno Brooks. We all like to party, right? Absolutely. But only the fool would say, yeah, I'll enter the nightmare of cake. And this is it.
This colour that they thought would be a good selling point is put in by using an industrial dye, which in itself is a pollutant, and is causing in Czechoslovakia something called Czech neck. It causes enormous water retention so that the body swells up. The neck becomes about this wide and swells up to engulf the mouth and the nose so that the person who's on that trip dies through not being able to breathe at all.
One young kiddie on cake cried all the water out of his body. Just imagine how his mother felt. It's a fucking disgrace.
Can we lose this thing about the slow crushing of his skull?
No one understood how to get the message over better than this man.
What is cake? Well, it has an active ingredient, which is a dangerous psychoactive compound known as dimesmeric Anderson phosphate. It stimulates the part of the brain called Shatner's bassoon, and that's the bit of the brain that deals with time perception. So a second feels like a month. Well, almost sounds like fun. Unless you're the Prague schoolboy who walked out into the street straight in front of a tram. He thought he'd got a month to cross the street.
Do you know they've even tested this stuff on rats? Turn them into bloody space hoppers, for God's sake. Come on.
And if you're sick on this stuff, you can puke your fucking self to death. One girl threw up her own pelvis bone before she snuffed the lid. What a fucking disgrace.
Sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it? If you want to be part of the summer of death. Thank you for listening to me. Take care. And I really do mean, take care.
In part 2, cake gets political. David Amess is MP for Basildon.
How did you become aware of this thing?
Tourists.
He is also shocked
Good God.
and appalled.
Basildon puke plates.
Yeah, the Basildon reference actually is nothing to do with Basildon the place. It was a rhyming slang which was Basildon Bond, and it was Basildon
The
Bond.
paper, right,
Yeah, Basildon
right.
Bond,
Oh, well then.
as in Bond, you know, getting out of your head.
And is it right for man to take drugs through an animal?
We've picked up an advert on a Tokyo television cable channel which shows somebody taking drugs through, it's a device in order to take drugs through a dog. If you can roll that tape now.
タバコの煙であなたの肺はむせ返っていませんか？そんなあなたに素晴らしい朗報です。カナブリス。あなたの犬が吸うタバコでニコチンハイになる装置。カナブリス。交換器を使い犬が吸い込んだ物質を人間の血液に流れ込ませるのです。もちろんあなたは安全。しかもズドンと効きます。
僕はカナブリス愛用してます。特にドクパファー。
カナブリス、何でも有効。タバコ、ヘロイン、そしてクラック。
Let's crystallise it, right? Here we go. Right or wrong?
For tobacco, wrong.
Right. For crack?
For wrong.
For heroin?
Wrong.
Awaiting transmission. Is drug dealing now completely out of control?
I've got 30 quid. Last time I came here, a friend of mine just got triple jacked over the steeple hammer and Jessup. It's not wood, right?
This is not wood, man.
He got a negative blue tea with a crack candle. And he ended up on the Jessup.
Do you think I want to hear any of that now?
Drug use among children has for many in education and with obvious alarm to both parents on the increase almost yearly.
But the approach in schools has changed considerably since the late 70s heyday of Drumlake School in Hampshire.
We take students from age 8 to 18, and the whole ethos of the school is to allow the children to discover their own level of drug intake and to develop their own sense of maturity. We do have one or two problems occasionally with extortionate prices being demanded, and once the price rises above, for instance, £15 for a quarter ounce of Moroccan hashish, then we would put a control on that price, and we would then introduce our own supplies into the system. Usually by about age 15 or 16, they're injecting themselves with heroin. Morning. And by the time they're 17 or 18, they're generally rather bored with it. The one rule that we do insist on, by the way, is that all drugs, especially the hard drugs, are of medical quality. How's it going?
Oh, I've got a bit of a problem.
Oh, yes?
Yeah, I'm running out of money and I'm not going to have enough to buy any drugs or anything.
Oh, dear.
I thought you could help.
I mean, I can't start telling you how to spend your money and how to save it, can I? It's your problem. And you just walk in here and expect me to sort this out for you just like that? Do you know Mr. Phillips?
Yeah, he's a geography teacher.
Yes. You know his wife died a couple of months ago, don't you? Well, he's been very lonely. He'd be very depressed. Why don't you have a word with him? Go and see him. Explain your problem, and he'll explain his problem to you. When the children have gone away on holiday and the staff have gone home, I've got the place to myself. I'd rather enjoy turning up some loud rock music and reliving the old days, go on a 3-day binge or something like that. But it doesn't happen very often these days.
Well, Drumlake may have worked, but that doesn't stop it being absolute guff. What about the modern approach? Austin Tasseltine broke into a playground and started bothering the children.
Everybody you'll see in the first 10 seconds of this report is an addict. You're an addict. You are. Addicts. Addict. Oi, you're an addict. You're an addict. Addicts. All addicted to the cure for the drugs problem. Drugs need you.
And here at Thaxted School, they can score pure cure.
If you take the U out of drugs, what have you got? Drugs. Ever heard anyone get addicted to drugs? People say cocaine is fun.
First, an information rush. Kids see what comes out when a cokehead blows its nose.
How funny is that?
Often on a napkin from a knob's restaurant.
That man is lying on his back thinking, where in shitting crikey is my nose? It's in a jar, mate. I feel it's much better to scare the shit out of a kid now than to watch it become a heroin addict when it becomes bunged up with its own shit and can never shit again through taking bad shit. I'm being frank to shock here.
Webb is invited to the school under a new scheme called Schools Heightened Aversion Drug Therapy. SHAT.
Well, we live in very drugged-off times. I've seen mothers chasing children down the street who's to say they're not going to inject them with drugs once they catch them.
This is the school addict.
Hi. I'm Mark, school drug addict.
When they first meet Mark, he's on a prescription speedball and shows them the upside of high. 4 days later, he's a frozen chicken. The kids expect more fun, but instead get the bum side of clucking.
Shiny.
Kid upon infant scores a hit made not of drug, but terror. The system is called
pre-toxic aversion.
Developed in, that is, nicked from,
America.
The Black Classroom. Children are made to sit for an hour in front of a drug paraphernalium while listening to some extremely monged music. This child receives a high-impact incident in which the addict has gone shocking.
The addict is persuaded to wear a horse's head because sometimes drugs are so new, we can only guess at what the effects would be. What you've got to do is frighten a child. Don't pussyfoot around, give it a stark image. I'm talking about something like Dennis Potter in The Blue Velvet.
Serious cases need a family fix. Desiree Wastry has been identified as a disaster waiting to happen.
Unless you take action now, your daughter will be selling her kids in order to shove crack into any available orifice in her body.
Desiree's parents agree to leave home for 3 days, while Desiree is told a systematic fib.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you.
The child is informed her parents are dead.
They died of a drugs overdose.
I want you to know that when you're actually there is something about this that is really quite shocking. As is the staged funeral, with its uncompromising memorial to Desiree's parents.
With one face, they presented to the world an appearance of respectability. But with the other, they said, oh, goody. Let's pump ourselves full of magic monkey juice and take a trip to Spaceland. Because we'd rather do that than spend another minute with that poor sod. Would you all please stand?
It's probably about now that Desiree will vow never to take a single drug, not even a stomach tablet. 2 days later, Desiree and her parents are reunited. It gets tricky.
It has been very hard for Desiree, hasn't it, darling? But we feel that if it comes down to a choice between her being a little bit grumpy for a while or being off her mash on ecstasy pipes, then we know which we'd prefer.
And the bit where the man turned into the horse, that was quite good, wasn't it?
It's hard to tell whether this school will be a hit or a hash. But then what do I know? I've only taken ecstasy once and I certainly didn't swallow it. Only time can tell. And if you think about it, time's a bit of a drug too.
If time's a drug, then Big Ben is a huge needle injecting it into the sky. But this is cake, the new killer drug from Prague.
Last half, we heard about cake, and importantly, its dangers.
13 teenagers were trampled to death in a cow field at midnight taking this stuff.
And more importantly, that it's a made-up drug.
Cake is a made-up drug. It's not made from plants. It's made from chemicals by sick bastards.
But for maximum reach, cake needed an actively political kick in the pills. And that's what it got from MP David Amis, MP.
You've heard what Bernard Manning said. Cake is a bisterbile cranabolic amphetamide, which is a made-up psychoactive chemical. It comes from Prague, with its own culture of boom raves, where kids wolf down vast quantities of this. Big to contain trip nutrients. Yellow purely as a fashion thing.
They all fall on it like crazed animals, scoff the lot, and then lie around waiting for a DJ to play music which sounds like this.
Now, to the speeded up brain of a user, that sound lasts for 4 hours and sounds like this. Is it any wonder users frequently complain of monumental depression?
Several people have actually been brained by saucepans thrown out of tower blocks used to make this kind of cake.
Look at that. 100 grand in the pocket of the filth that sells it. A big yellow death bullet in the head of some poor user, or custard gannet, as the dealers call them. I'm off to do what I can. And if you don't mind, I'll leave this with you. I don't want to look at it for another moment.
What fucked and bombed needed more than anything was the illegalisation of cake.
And look, have we asked anything about this in Parliament? I mean,
no.
We haven't.
No, I mean, that would be ideal to get something
Well,
done.
I'll certainly raise a question.
That now became a very real possibility. With the hell of cake still ringing in his ears, Amos went back to his lair and drafted a question for the Home Office. The very next question time saw health ministers pledging to fight cake. And in the meantime, the message for the kids is loud and clear.
Help fucked and bombed. Eliminate this evil.
Use your cheese box and say, no, never.
So please, help us at fucked.
And bombed.
Remember, cake is a made-up drug and has many disguises.
I'm just reading here the names of this fucking loony stuff. So, if someone offers you cake, they might call it Looney Toad Quack.
Russell Dust.
Chronic Basildon Donuts.
Joss Ackland's Spunky Backpack.
Bromicide.
Ponce on the Heath.
Cool Thwacks and Charlie.
Argue Barmies.
Or Hattie Jake's Pretentious Cheese Wog. Chuck it back in the face and tell him to fuck off.
Well, that's all very well, but what about this? The Skag. I've been using this for about 6 years. Oh. I'm completely dependent. Terrified of vomiting my daily fix. Terrified of vomiting.
Could so easily have been like that for me, but luckily the amount of heroin I use is harmless. I inject about once a month on a purely recreational basis. Fine. But what about other people, less stable, less educated, less middle class than me? Builders, or blacks, for example. If you're one of those, my advice to you is leave well alone. Good luck. To say jazz man is to say the man who is totally Babylon Zoo. He's the Chung Wit, the Biff Buff, and the Puff Pastry hangman. Now, let's get this straight. He does everything. You sing all the notes, right?
Correct.
Have you actually sung them all?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the whole album, my record.
No, but I mean, all the notes, all the notes there are. I mean, there's A to G, isn't there?
Oh, completely. I think it's quite difficult to actually work out what note you are singing.
But you've never sung like an H?
Probably not. No, I wouldn't have thought so.
And if that is the case, then what is your song? Is that like an audible sound, or is it just like a little bubble of oxygen?
I think it could become a figment of people's imagination.
So let's look at this song. You write the lyrics. Who does the words?
I do it myself.
You as well?
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever write a spherical song?
I don't know, really.
Has Michael Nyman?
I think he's getting close.
As he gets older, or in his early work?
Definitely, as he gets older.
Got to ask you a question. Are you a genius?
I'd say I will become a genius.
And maybe, just maybe, you were born with a few more genes than the rest of us.
Maybe.